Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it's time for my first update of June. Um, so summer is finally here, although it's not officially the summer season, because the season doesn't start until like the 21st or the 22nd in June. So, but because, for years, like, we would get out in early June when I was a student, I've always associated June as the beginning of summer. Um, so yeah, so I consider this the summer, even though it's June. I guess in a way it would be more considered a spring month, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way, because I think most schools in the U.S. get out in June, in the beginning of June. But so let's talk about where I am with my reading. So I feel like I had a pretty good reading month in May. I'm pretty happy with it. Um, and I don't know if I read if I finished any big books in May. I'm not sure, but I feel pretty good. And there were 3 Tolkien books I had my eye on Thrift Books, but I decided not to get them because I really need to get back on track with my skipping months and not buying books every month, because I kind of had a setback. Like, I was doing good for part of the 2022, and in 2021 I had a period where I was doing good with that. But, around the holidays I kind of fell off the wagon a little bit, and then my birthday month came. And then, of course, like, I'm sure a lot of people experience this, where you see a book that you've been wanting to buy, and, like, and if it gets on discount, like, you're thinking, oh, it's discount, so I can buy it. But then, it's just like you have all these other books. I have all these other books to read, and it's, I mean, these sites, will tempt you and will, like, send you emails if you subscribe to the site, and they'll say, oh, this has gone down in price, or, and there was one email I got the day before where it was like, if you buy $15 or more, it will go down this much in, percentage, and it's, but I need to, like I said, I need to just get back on track and just stick to the every other month thing, so, my mom doesn't worry that I'm, you overspending or neglecting, books I already have and I just got it, I just bought or received as gifts. So I just gotta get back to the every other month thing. Um, and I'm going to get them at some point. And even if they're not thrift books, they're still on Amazon. I can get them there. Won't be, they'll be a little bit more pricey. But, I mean, they're still there either way. So, yeah, so I will get those at some point. I would like to. And who knows, maybe I'll get them for Christmas if I don't get them before then. But anyway, so currently I am reading quite a few. So I wanted to participate in Ancients-a-thon, and I'm still thinking about it. Like, there will be some books that I will consider that I want to prioritize for June that would apply to Ancients-a-thon. Like, I've been meaning to pick up Paradise Lost and The Divine Comedy again. I keep meaning to do that, but it's kind of a more challenging read for me, and it's not as, I want to pick it up, I want to read it, but it's just, there's other books that come off as a little easier for me to get into, and so I keep, passing it over, so I need to get to that one. I need to get to one of those, so I'm going to try to keep in the back of my mind to consider them for this month. But I am reading one it's not ancient literature, but it is about an ancient historical figure, and that is Hadrian, one of the emperors of Rome. This is Hadrian and the Triumph of Rome. It was a recent purchase at the Roast Office, which I did go there yesterday. So you will be seeing the books I bought yesterday. But this is about Hadrian, and and his accomplishments and how he became the emperor and his downfalls and, you know, how he did some pretty good things for Rome, according to the author. But of course, just like any other emperor, he had his faults. You know, we get some background on the people that kind of influenced and shaped him. Like Trajan. I was trying to, when I was rehearsing what I was going to say in this video, I couldn't remember his name, but Trajan was one of his guardians who kind of influenced him because his dad died when he was really young, so he was raised by his mother, and of course a woman could only do so much, unfortunately. So he had to have male guardians to guide him. So we get that, and we talk about like kind of the stuff that was going on before he was old enough to take charge, and when he was still in school and stuff, which I did not realize that in Rome, that mathematics and science weren't part of the curriculum back then. They weren't seen as important. Literature and philosophy and all that stuff was the important stuff. So, which I guess if you're gonna be a government official, you know, you need to be able to read, while, you know, it's either that or military. I mean, there's a couple other, you know, businesses and stuff, but most people, I think, go for the government in military jobs. So yeah, and so we get a lot more background on Rome right before Hadrian was old enough. Like we just read, we read a little bit about the slaves and putting them in the arena to fight and battle it out and everything, and how, you know, that was a big pastime in, you know, in Roman culture. And they also had a thing for animal cruelty. I mean, they didn't see it as cruel, but, you know, animals fighting each other and beating the crap out of each other like humans do. So the animals, in a way, were enslaved like the humans. Like the human slaves. And of course, they talk about, you know, what was going on with the Jews and how they tried to eradicate the Jews, as always, you know, them being the chosen. They see themselves as the chosen people, and they rebelled against Rome and the empire's leadership. So they were like, we got to get rid of them. They're a threat. Which feel bad for the Jewish religion. People of the that are Jewish, they had quite the short end of the stick. But although I don't know anything about, you know, their religious beliefs or anything, or at least I know very little. But being the chosen people, like, I guess they kind of just accepted that the fact they were always going to be treated like shit by other groups. And, you know, they had to go through, and I guess they accepted they have to go through all these trials. Not that they, you know, are like cool with it. It's like, that's just how it is. We're gonna be treated, you know, put in camps by the Germans and all that. Or enslaved, or, you know, people are gonna commit genocide trying to get rid of all of us. Not that they, you know, were like, oh well, that's just how it is. I think it was more, I'm thinking along the lines of more that it's just they knew that it was gonna happen. Possibly. I don't know. I'm just speculating here because I don't know a lot about it, but I know that they were the chosen people, and and then we also get this, which I hear the word stoic. I think of it describing a person as very stoic, very serious. I have to look up in the dictionary how it defines, but it's like one of those words that I just, you know, I don't know, I couldn't give you the exact definition, but it's like I have an idea of when someone's stoic, how they would act, how they would look and stuff. But apparently, actually, it's a type of philosophy of being like, you know, the whole idea of if I didn't succeed at this was meant to happen. Like the author gives this example of, you know, if your son or your child is in the water, you know, was drowning in the water, and you try to save them, but you can't save them, you accept that this is how it is. This is this is what this is how it's meant to be. And that was one of the philosophies and beliefs of some of the people in Rome. But there was a lot of like political competition. It sounds like different groups of people believe in different things. Like here's the thing, and I got this impression from SPQR that Rome was good at conquering and seizing control. What they were not good at, I feel like the impression I'm getting, is keeping everything in control and governing. Like in governing people, governing them in a fair way. Even although they did create democracy, or their version of democracy. Like democracy obviously has evolved. But this is where Rome is where it started, I believe. But it's definitely a very intriguing read, and I'd be interested to read his book on Cicero after I read this one. Which is just, I think, good because the history of the decline and fall of Rome is a long book. So it's a big commitment. So I've been trying to kind of start with these smaller books on Roman history, and then eventually I'll get to that one, which that still might take a long time. But yeah, he is Anthony Everett wrote a book about Cicero, and then he also wrote a book on Augustus, who was the first Roman emperor. So I would love to read those as well, because, So yeah, so far this is really interesting, and I feel like I'm wondering if a lot of books on Rome, especially, ones about the emperors, will not just be specifically about them and their life, but about Rome itself and how it was formed and how it worked and everything. I feel like that's, especially about the books about the emperors, that's how it's going to be, that they're not just going to talk about specifically them. They're going to talk about the Roman government, just the empire in general, and how they influenced it and shaped it. So this is very intriguing. I'm liking this. And actually, one of the books I almost bought yesterday was about a famous, I think he was Roman, or no, he was Carthaginian. Sorry, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Probably not saying that right, but a famous name that I'm familiar with, that I've heard before, but now I can't think of it. But it was called Tyrant. It was a translated work, and it was about this one leader who, decided that democracy sucks. I'm going to take charge and be a tyrant. Which democracy has its faults, and maybe this is because I'm an American, but the idea of a tyrant, to me, the way in a modern reader, so the idea of a tyrant does not work for me, and I think we're better in democracy, though it has its fault. It's not, and currently in our political climate, we're not doing that great. We need to work at it, but, yeah, I ended up not buying it because a lot of the reviews point out is, that, like I said, that's what I do when I go to the roast office, is I go through the books, pick a bunch of books I want to read, and then narrow down by actually reading the reviews, not just looking at the ratings, but actually reading through reviews, particularly 3-star reviews on Goodreads. And that's how I kind of determine which. I know some people would probably say, well, you should read it yourself and everything. And yeah, roast office, the books aren't that expensive, but I gotta narrow it down because I'm not gonna buy 4 or 5 books, or I should say 5 or 6 books because I have bought 4 before, but I need to still narrow it down. I can't just buy a bunch of books. I'm not so I still gotta narrow it down. So yeah, people say go ahead and read through the books, but I don't have time. I don't have all day to read it. So, and I'm not gonna stay at the bookstore all day. I love the bookstore. and everything, but, you know, my home is a 15-minute walk away, or I could call someone to pick me up if, you know, my parents are home. So it's like, so yeah, I don't stay at the roast office all day. So I'm not going to go through all those books and read every single one and be like, oh, I should read it first and then I can decide. It's like, I don't, you know, people would say, you know, oh, you should just decide for yourself by reading it. It's like, I can't do that because I'm not going to buy like 6 or 7 books and just like go through them and spend, because yeah, it's the roast office, so it's like the most expensive book is $5, but maybe 6. But yeah, I'm not gonna do that. So it just helps to go through the Goodreads reviews and actually read them, not just look at the ratings, but I do read them and decide if what they say in the reviews I would feel similar. So yeah, I'll go through them and put them back, and some of the reviews were just like, I kind of agree with the sentiments about what people said about, and it sounded like something I wouldn't be as interested in. So, since I'm not getting that one, I only picked, like I said, the only reason I picked that one is because I'm reading that Hadrian book. So it kind of was like, I'm associating with it. But anyway, I'll talk more about that in a minute. So I am also reading, The Last Watch, which I think is going to be a trilogy by J.S. Dews. This is a sci-fi, and which it puts you right in the action. That's for sure. And you have this. It starts with this Prince Cavalon. We have 2 main perspectives. Prince Cavalon, and he has been sent by his family to this ship called the Argus because he's kind of a troublemaker. He has given his family a lot of grief, and he disrupted his grandfather's plans for something he was going to do that he didn't agree with. So as punishment, they send him to the Argus, the ship the Argus, and which is governed by our other main perspective, Ada Quinn Rake. I'm just gonna call her Quinn Rake. Who she is a captain of this ship, and she and Cavalon do not get along. She thinks he needs more discipline, and he's a troublemaker, and he has a bit of a problem with authority. So, and it's basically a crew of a lot of misfits. He slowly realized a lot of people that were, caused trouble for, people in charge for the government, for military, or never sending them on this ship. And as the story progresses, you find out that this ship is slowly hitting, like, this thing called the Divide is slowly coming towards the ship. And they're, they don't know what's on the other, the crew doesn't know what's on the other side. And so they're trying to stop that from happening, crashing into or going through the Divide. So we're not in the best place with the ship. The ship is old and is not the best functioning ship. They were just given to them because, we're going to give you scraps. And so everything they need is the worst, or not, the worst case, or, the leftovers of things. So, like, Cavalon, in one of her right-hand men, Jaqen, I think, they are on this mission right now, trying to reach out for help. But now things are starting to fall apart on the ship, and everyone's panicking. And also the ship, they have these weird ripple things happening on the ship where they see a future vision sort of thing of some of the crew members, like a hologram of crew members and a future that could potentially happen. And they don't know, and they call them ripples, and Quinn doesn't know if they're real or not, doesn't know until after they start rippling that they're real. and that they're not real. So there's a lot going on currently in the book. A lot of tension, a lot of things, you know, a lot of shit hit the fan moments. But yeah, it's really intense. It's a pretty good story. Like, I'm not a science person, so I can't explain all the, you know, the space and science stuff as well as good as some people who are more into sci-fi. I'm slowly just trying to get into it. I mean, it's not that it's not that obviously I can read it and I understand it. It's just having to explain it to you guys is not, I'm not very good at that. So, like I said, I think it's gonna be a trilogy, but I'm on chapter 14 right now. It's pretty good. It's really good. It's very, you know. So there's that one, and then I did dip my toes into Damascus Gate, which I guess it makes me kind of think of a Dan Brown, but a more literary version of Dan Brown's work. Our main character is a journalist. He is in Jerusalem, and he's trying to find a story. And there's a lot of turmoil, a lot of stuff going on, you know, in Jerusalem at the time. This is in the 90s, so it's right before the millennium. I'm looking at the back. To refresh my memory. So there's a lot of religious fanatics going on and causing trouble for the people, and they're slowly trying to discreetly get rid of them. And like I said, Christopher Lucas is the journalist is trying to find a story, but he's, his confidant is trying to, get him to back off or just focus on certain kinds of stories. And there's also, we were introduced to this woman, Sonia, and she was an American, I think she's half black, half white, I think. And there's this other character, Raz something, and I think he's been seeing a doctor trying to get off of drugs, or his dad wants to get off of drugs. But yeah, it's very intriguing. Like I said, it feels like it's gonna be kind of like a Dan Brown novel, but more literary and better written and more less fast-paced, a little more slow. But it is intriguing. It's very intriguing. And Raz just did the last chapter I read. Raz was interacting with some guy named Melker. Raziel Melker. They call him Raz, and he meets this guy after his visit with the doctor. He meets this guy named Ducuff, and they're talking, and he sees him as a musician. He's like, "Are you, ask him if he's a musician?" And he does something weird to him at the end of the chapter. Oh, Adam Ducuff. He does something weird to him, like, and I don't know if he like drugs him or gets inside his head or does like a hypnosis thing or something. Then he convinces him he's tired, and almost makes him kind of submissive or something. I'm trying to figure it out. It's definitely an intriguing mystery. Like, I want to know what. I'm definitely curious what Raz did to, because it looks like he did something to him. So, but I'm definitely curious. And I want to know, and Sonia was mentioned, Raz mentioned, like, he knew Sonia and was like, she was also taking drugs and stuff. Although when we meet her, she seems like clearly that she's when we were introduced to her before this chapter, it seems like she was not doing drugs then, or she's kind of gotten off of them or something. But yeah, I'm definitely intrigued by this. Like I said, I want to focus this one first and finish this one in Hadrian, and then when I'm done with that, I'll, focus and come back to this one. And I did kind of read a little bit of this one, The Best of All Possible Worlds, because it was my most recent thrift books purchase in May, and it was at the beginning of May, and it was one of these where I just I figured, because again I was thinking about getting some thrift books purchases, but then I was feeling like I need to take a step back and try to go back to the skipping months thing. I decided I should also pick up some of my other thrift books purchases, and this was my most recent one. So I did start this, but like I said, I'm in the middle of that other science fiction book, The End of the Watch. So I figured I'll finish that one, focus on that one, and then come back to this one. Now I don't really have a lot to talk about this. I only read like 12 pages, so I really do not have anything to talk about. I mean, we have been introduced to a character, this in the prologue, see if I can get his name, I think he's like a scientist or a doctor. But I feel like I can't really talk about it because I don't have anything to say just yet, because I haven't read enough to really be able to talk about it thoroughly. So yeah, I did read a tiny bit of this. I have not come back to Silmarillion. I have only read, past chapter, up to chapter 4 of that one. So I need to pick that one up again. So yeah, that's as far as rating what I'm rating. That's all I got. So let's talk about the books I bought. So, like I said, I went to Rostov's yesterday, and I almost bought that book called Tyrant, but decided not to. And I did buy 3 books, so I ended up spending $12. But yeah, so one of the things when I was there was this awkward encounter. I mean, not too bad. It was just one of these things where I wanted to avoid another conversation. Which some of you guys might, not think it's that bad and might dismiss or whatever. But for me, it's kind of one of these where I just wanted them to. I didn't want to be bothered. But they were these 2 older gentlemen talking. They were in a conversation, and like I said, when I go there, what I do is I pick a bunch of books, that sound interesting after reading the summary, and I pick one of the tables to sit, and sit down and put them down, and then I might do one more look, go through each of the shelves, look at the classic shelf, go into the vault and all that, and so I picked up a bunch of books. And then I was trying to narrow it down, and I looked at them and decided there was at least one book that I decided that, I right away was like, okay, I'm not in the mood for this kind of book right now. And granted, yes, I could have bought it and then just set it on my shelf, but I'm like trying to lessen doing that, just having my books sit on my shelf for years. I'm trying to avoid doing that, continuing to do that, at least not doing it as much. So I put that one back, and I just go through my books and read the reviews on Goodreads. Like I said, I read the 3-star reviews. But when I picked up the books and put them on, I was one of the tables available was right next to those 2 gentlemen, and the older guy was jokingly teasing, and it was just teasing. It was harmless, but he was like, oh, I want you to read the books by the time you leave. And I kind of joked back, showed them that I got that he was teasing me, and was like, oh, that's probably not going to happen. And he turned around, and the rest of the time they didn't really talk to me, which I was fine with. But at one point, I just kept anticipating that they were going to say something to me and tease me again when he kept seeing me go back and forth and putting books back on the shelf. And so I was like, okay, I want to avoid that. So I went to a different table. So I'm still close to them, but not like there was still a little bit of space in between. But that just bothers me because it's like when I'm going there, I'm focusing on myself and the books I'm buying and whatever I brought with me to read. So I don't like when people bother me. Like if I'm with a friend, my friend, an actual friend, like Terry, for instance, if she's visiting, then yeah, I will focus on her a little bit. But if it's a complete stranger, I don't want to be bothered. Like, it's like, go away. Don't bother me. But I'm not going to be mean either. I'm not going to be rude or be like, or even passive aggressive / polite, responsive, kind of response, or a polite response even. Like, I'll give someone a response, but in my head I'm thinking, why are you bothering me? Go away. I don't want to be, But even though people bother me, I can't just be brutally honest and be like, can you leave me alone? Because he was just being very perfectly polite and just teasing me, harmless teasing. It's just, I don't feel comfortable with people bothering, wanting to talk to me, even if it's just for like a second, unless they're a friend. And even then, when friends or family, I'm reading and they start talking and asking questions, I'm just like cringing and be like, let me read. But I'm not the person who can just be like, do this. Ever rarely do I do that. I think I might have done that recently when I was reading during my 15-minute break, and my coworker responded and found it was amusing. And I did kind of explain to him and making clear that I was just, lightheartedly explaining. It's like, I don't want to be bothered when I'm reading, and admitting that it's kind of annoying when I'm trying to read my book. And then, when he probably, I don't remember, but I think he did, say something like, well, people just want to know what you're reading. And so I'm thinking, I don't care if you want to know what I'm reading. When I'm reading, it's my reading. I'm reading. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to stop reading just to answer your questions. Which is why a lot of times I'll hold up the book, show the title cover or the cover, or, just be like, here, this is what I'm reading. Okay, no, stop talking to me. And then, of course, at work, it's even more important because I only got 15 minutes, so I only will get through like a couple pages. Now, of course, if someone, is like, I want to sit with you and talk to you, then I will put the book down and try to hide my annoyance. But, and sometimes those people are people that kind of understand because they're readers themselves, like, every so often, but, but right now they kind of want to talk to me and get to know me. Like, I had a new coworker that happened with. But yeah, it just bothers me. People bother me when I'm, going through my process of picking books to buy or I'm getting ready to read. It's like, don't bother me. Like, this is my zone, my space. I want my space without people trying to interrupt it. That's why now I dread going to the pool by myself, because first I don't like going places like the pool or the movies by myself. But then I just know that people are going to see me and be like, oh, it's so impressive that you read it. Oh, it's so cute. And it's like, okay, that's great that you think it's impressive that someone my age reads, but I don't want to be bothered. Okay? And it's like, I can't be rude and say that to people. Even though in my head, I'm thinking I want to say that to someone. But yeah, so yesterday was one of those moments where I was, someone was... The good news is that he didn't bother me after that. He didn't say anything after that, and I moved. And I was worried. I was hesitant to go to the next table because I was worried that he would say something even then. But so it was good after that. It was just one of those moments where I was like, anticipate that they would bother me again. So like I said, I went through a lot of books. There was a fantasy book I almost bought called Stolen by Pan. which I think might have been a YA or adult book, where this girl named Kit, I guess she ends up in Neverland, and maybe according to the description, I think she has a connection to Neverland. And I'm guessing, and Pan, of course, is not what she expected. Not the Disney version. Probably a little bit closer to the original Jan Berry story, where he's a sadistic little brat. But, or maybe in the Once Upon a Time version of Pan. Where he's a grown-ass man, but he's turned into a child. Although Rumpel's dad was already pretty immature. Yeah, by the way, Rumpel's dad was Peter Pan. But, anyway, so, yeah, and there was an implication that there was going to be a romance and stuff, and, there were people that loved it, but I focused on the 3-star reviews, and then eventually I decided I'm just not in the mood for something like that. Like I said, I could have bought it and then saved it for another time, but I didn't want it to be sitting on my shelf, and eventually I lose interest. So I'm trying to work on those and fix those situations, and not have books sitting on my shelf and eventually me changing my mind. And I do that with dollar, because there are a few books at the dollar store that they sell, but it's really just books that have been rejected, not anything really special or anything. And I do have two books from the dollar store that I intended to read, so I want to get to them this summer, by the way. But yeah, that's one of those situations where I bought books from the dollar store before, and they would be sitting on my shelf, and then eventually I decide I'm not interested anymore. I mean, even though I only spend like a couple dollars, I still feel bad. But yeah, so I'm trying to not have these books sitting on my shelf for long periods of time before I pick them up. Anyway, so I ended up, so I didn't get that one. And there were a few others. There was a historical romance, a famous Duchess. And the reviews of that one were like, unless you want, this kind of thing, you probably won't like this book. Like, there was, it did not sound good. Some other people's reviews. And again, yes, I should read the book myself, but again, as I said before, I don't have time for that. So, I put that one back as well. So the 3 I settled on were these, which seems to happen when I go to the bookstore, where I focus kind of primarily on classics, maybe some historical fiction, and really, yeah, classics and historical fiction are the books I mostly get at the Rose office. Occasionally I might get a fantasy, and I might get like a horror book, and I will go through mystery stages where I get mystery books. The problem with mystery is, once, I feel like, with the exception of something like this, I feel like with a mystery, once you read it once, and then unless you're just really into the mystery and that genre, because, there are some types of mysteries that, like Kate Moran's, a lot of times her books are mysteries, but they're not like detective stories or something like that. They're more like mysteries about the lives of the people the main present day character is trying to understand. So it's a little different, I feel like. And the same with something like this potentially could be different. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I don't know I'll feel when I finish it. So yeah, I feel like mystery is a genre. Mystery and thrillers are genres that it's like, once you read them, for me at least, once I read them, I'm not going to be interested anymore. So it's a perfect genre to get from the library, to borrow from the library, because then you're just borrowing and you return it when you're done. But I did go through a mystery stage, or I read a couple mysteries, but then I ended up getting rid of all of them, at least the ones I read. So yeah, it's historical fiction. Now I've got some I will go into the vault as well, which is where the nonfiction is. And apparently religious books. Like, there's that whole series with, I cannot remember what it's called, what the series is actually called, which I tried to get the Left Behind series, that's what it's called. The Left Behind series. They did make a TV movie with Kirk Cameron for Left Behind, and I don't know if they ever continued it, but it has a lot of other books, like 13 or 14 books. I did start it, but then eventually I lost interest. I mean, it was kind of a cool concept. You know, I mean, even if you're not a religious person, you can look at it as more of a fantasy or, you know, fantasy story kind of thing, because, like, it's, you know, like, you could look at, like, the show Supernatural, where, yeah, that stuff, for some people, that stuff is based on truth, some of the mythology, but for others, it's myth, it's not real. But it's the whole idea of the book of Revelations, where these people, you know, where God, you know, the world ends, but there's only a group of people left. Kirk Cameron's character is one of them, and I think he's the main character that we're introduced to in the first. Although really there's multiple main characters, but the first character that we're introduced, I think, is his character. It's been a while since I read it though, and I never saw that movie. And it's the whole idea of, like, and this politician shows up who they believe is, you know, the what is it called, that the Antichrist. That's what it's called. They think he is that person. But I never did get to that part in the story because I only read the first book. So when I did give it to my grandma, and she liked it at the time. But then my grandma's not the kind of person who reads regularly. So, and she used to read her Bible regularly, but she doesn't read as much anymore. She spends most of her time playing solitaire, watching the Fox News, and eating. But yeah, so she doesn't get a lot of reading done. She doesn't read a lot. But yeah, that's there in the vault. And a couple other books about God and the devil. And actually, one of Tolkien's books that I wanted to get was called Tolkien Dogmatics, which is his theology and how he incorporates it into the world of Middle-earth, and how it shaped the story and stuff. And I did scan a little bit to see if it was possibly there, but it wasn't. And it probably, which, if it was there, would be like $4. Unless it's a hardback, that would be $5. So yeah, I did look for that one, but and I also looked for the Napoleon book. I saw the time before that. Not that. Okay, let me repeat myself. So I did look for the Napoleon book that I saw when I went there back in April or May, I cannot remember, which visit. Which this is something that was inspired by Jennifer Brooks. At the time, I was thinking, I don't know if I like Napoleon, just because, you know, this booktuber that I like, this booktuber is a favorite of mine, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm gonna like something that she likes. So I passed it over, and of course, I decide, well, let me look for it and see if it's there, and of course it's not. Someone already snatched it up. The thing about used bookstores is no guarantee the books that you spotted before that you decide not to get them but you want to get later are going to be there again. Yeah, so it was not there, but that's okay. I did get a nonfiction book, so let me go ahead and show you what I bought, what the books I just officially decided on. First, the nonfiction book I did end up getting was The Crusades by Geoffrey Henley. The subtitle is Islam and Christianity in the Struggle for World Supremacy. So I know a little bit about the Crusades. And there's the whole Knights Templar thing, and I know a little bit about that. But I don't know a lot. But this is the whole, so let me just read the back. A history of the Christian war for faith and bitter legacy. Why did thousands of ordinary men and women, led by knights, ladies, kings, and queens, embark on campaigns of fanatical conquest in the world of Islam? Hindley tells the story of an institution that has perturbed European history, troubled Christian consciousness, and embittered Muslim attitudes toward the West. He offers a lively record for the Middle East, pagan, Baltic, and fascinating portraits of the major personalities of Godfrey, from Godfrey of Bouillon, the first land ruler of Jerusalem, to the visionary French peasant boy who inspired the tragic Children's Crusade. Addressing questions rarely considered, Hindley sheds light on the pressing issues surrounding religious division and shows how the Crusades have helped shape relations between Christian and Muslim countries today. So, like I said, I don't know a lot about it, but I was definitely curious to read more about it. And it's not a super long nonfiction work. So, it actually has a Borders. You guys remember Borders? It has a Borders price sticker on it still. So I guess the person bought this when it was at when Borders still was in business. That's cool. I feel a little nostalgia for that because I grew up with Borders. Just so sad. It's so sad that it died out, that it lost business. But yeah, so this sounded really intriguing. And it was $15 at the time, but it's actually it was $4. I got it for $4. But yeah, so I'm definitely intrigued by the Crusades, and I don't know a lot. And there's actually a series about the Knights Templar, a fiction series. I don't remember what it's called, that I did start watching about the Knights Templar and how the Pope sent them on this quest to find this treasure, but they ended up not finding it. And the Pope, wanting to protect his position, and he wanted to send them on another religious war, but the lead character was like, no, I'm not gonna do this. Like, I'm not gonna go on this other religious war just to start trouble again. And so that's when the Pope decides, well, you know what, I'm gonna, have you frame you guys, make you act like you stole the treasure and that you're hoarding it. And already there was a subplot in that show where the main character, the lead knight, was having an affair with King Philip's, at the time, his wife. Like, they were together. So I don't know if any of that kind of stuff was in the history at all, or if they just put it in the story for the sake of drama. But yeah, so, and I have been meaning to pick up that show again. I like when these nonfiction books have like pictures and sketches and stuff. But yeah, I can also read this for Ancients-a-thon because it is ancient history, so I could read it. Like I said, the problem is, I always run into this problem where, like, I do these book hauls for you guys, and I'm like, as I'm looking at the books, all of a sudden I'm remembering how I want to read it right now, but I'm in the middle of other books, so it's like I need to get those, or at least finish one of those books before I get to anything new. The struggles of a reader. But yeah, so that's The Crusades by Geoffrey Hindley. Even though it's not about the Crusades, for some reason this cover gives me vibes of what was that book called? I don't believe it. Chaucer's that Chaucer book. I cannot think of what it's called. The one that I read in college, about kind of these group of people going on a quest, and I cannot think of what it's called. As soon as I stop filming more, in the middle of my filming, I'm gonna remember what it's called. But yeah, the cover makes me think of that Chaucer book. And I would read them together, but they don't have any to do with, like, the only thing they have in common probably is that they're around the same time period, probably. So there's that one. So the next one is Anglo-Saxon attitudes. As soon as I saw Anglo-Saxon, that got my attention. Especially because I'm currently reading the Warrior Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell. And by Angus Wilson. This is probably one of those classics that came out but wasn't really popular. Like, couldn't compete with some of the other more famous classics. So I'm gonna read the back because I don't remember enough to really tell you what it's about offhand. Gerald Middleton is a 60-year-old self-proclaimed failure. Worse than that, he's a failure with a conscience. As a young man, he was involved in an archaeological dig that turned up an obscene idol in the coffin of a 17th century bishop and scandalized a generation. The discovery was, in fact, the most outrageous archaeological hoax of the century, and Gerald has long known who was responsible and why. But to reveal the truth is to risk destroying the world of cozy compromises that, personally as well as professionally, he has long made his own. One of England's first openly gay novelists, Angus Wilson, was a dirty realist who relished the sleaze and scuffle of daily life, slashily satirical, virtuosically plotted, and displaying Dickensian humor and nerve. Anglo-Saxon Attitudes features a vivid cast of characters that includes scheming academics, fading actresses, big businessmen toggling between mistresses and wives, media celebrities, hustlers, transvestites, blackmailers, toadies, and even one holy fool. Everyone, it seems, is either in cahoots or in the dark. Even as comically intrepid Gerald Middleton struggles to maintain some dignity while digging up a history of lies. So this is going to be intriguing. I got another book that I'm kind of excited. I want to pick up like now. I'm going to start reading now, but I want to get at least 1 or 2 books that I'm in the middle of finished before I pick up anything new. So this sounded really intriguing. Like I said, the Anglo-Saxon title got my attention. But I think it's a modern day story, or modern day when it was, or consider modern day when it was written. Oh, this sounded intriguing. And then the last one was one that I have another book by the author. But this is a portrait of the artist as a young man in Dubliners by James Joyce. So I have Ulysses by James Joyce, which is a retelling of the Odyssey. With an sorry, 1 second, I have this stupid pop-up thing where you're not completely protected bullshit. And so I have that, but the problem with that is it's very intimidating because he uses all the different writing styles that I'm just not used to, including stream of consciousness, I believe. And I'm intrigued by it, but it's just a lot, to get into. So, but this is a little smaller, and I did have Dubliners for a while. I had a different copy of it, an individual copy of Dubliners, but at the time, I had decided I wasn't going to read. I figured it's not my kind of read. I wasn't going to read it, so I sent it, so I donated it, and this was back in Maryland, so before we even moved here. But I saw this, because all the other books, all the other classics just weren't, a lot of them were mass markets, and, just didn't hold my attention, so this is the one I picked, because I want to try James Joyce and really get into, give him, I want to continue to try James Joyce and get into him, because here's the thing, there's a lot of authors that the way people talk about them, it sounds like you want to check them out, they sound intriguing, but then you run into walls where either their writing style or some of their books don't interest you, and, and it's like you get so frustrated because you want to like them and appreciate like everyone else does. You want to love them like everyone else does, but it's just, there's aspects of them that you might not love. And not everybody's going to love every classic author. Just because they're a classic author and, their books are famous does not necessarily mean you have to love them. and doesn't, so the best you can do is just try and see how you feel. And that's what I want to do with continue James Joyce, is to try, and maybe I'll end up liking him. But I know I believe Emmy has talked about The Portrait of an Artist before, and I think she read it and liked it. And that's usually how books end up being getting my attention or being on my radar, because a booktuber likes them. And if the way they describe them sounds like something I might like, then I will check them out. And it's easy to get them at the Roast Office or other used bookstores, because, or get them off of Thrift Books, because they're cheap. I mean, Thrift Books still, one of the books I wanted to buy, Tolkien related, was 20 something. So it's still, not like under $4. And it's not like everything's under $4. Which is why that ad that I show all the time with the couple, and they're like, they both are like, I have something to tell you, I've fallen in love with thrift books, and they're like, everything's under $5, or most of your favorite, and I'm like, every time I see them, I'm like, no, not everything is under $5. It depends on the book you want to buy. If you want to buy a hardback book or a book that's a little more new, it's not under $5. Not everything, some of the books, even the paperback, some of the paperbacks are still like $7 or more. So I'm like, so yeah, that kind of bugs me, because it's like, no, not everything is under $5. But yeah, I couldn't tell you a lot about, so anyway, I can't really tell you a lot about this. What, Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man, or Dubliners. I think Dubliners is about a family who runs like a boarding house or something. Of course, the author being Irish, it takes place in Ireland. But yeah, so which makes me maybe just start with Dubliners first, because that's the one I'm most familiar with. But when I get books where there's more than one book in a book, like in more than one story in a book, then I feel like I gotta read them in order, and I can't just read in the middle. Like, that's one problem I'm having with The Awakening. The Awakening is not the first story in there. So there's all these other stories, so I'm like, I feel like I have to read it in order before I even get to The Awakening, but then The Awakening is the one I'm most familiar with, so maybe I should read that one first. But then the other contributing factor is also, do I want to read the one that I'm most into first? Maybe I should read some of the other works first, and then get to the one I'm most into, or the one I'm most interested in. Okay, so there it is. That is my book haul and what I'm currently reading. Like I said, I'm stopping doing TBRs. And just focusing on, just picking whatever interests me at the time. Like, kind of sticking with the mood reading. Like I said, there will be times when readathons, I have them in the back of my mind. Like, in July, I wanted to participate in Jane Austen July again. But I would like to do, and then, Ancients-a-thon, so there are some ancient works of literature that I want to consider. But anyway, if you guys like this video, be sure to give a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, click on the bell notification below if you want to be notified when I upload videos, and I hope you are enjoying your reading and your summer is off to a great start. Alright, bye!